everybody. This is a recap of the second game of the match between Wenjun and Lei Tingjie Women World Championship match. I'm Grandmaster Alik Gershon. I will give you a short recap of today's game, which the game was very interesting from a positional point of view. Both players played extremely well. We didn't see too many sparks in this game, but they were extremely precise, both of them, and we will see all the highlights soon. So the game was Queen's Gambit Declined, the very famous, the very popular Tarrasch variation. And here Wenjun chose to go for the slight advantage, for a less promising, very similar to what Lei Tingjie did yesterday. She went for a slight edge, hoping to squeeze her opponent for some slight advantage, but long-term advantage. And here this position is not new. This is the first point, very interesting. So Black plays. The problem of Black's position here is that this pin, this annoying pin along the h4 d8 diagonal, and Black doesn't have an easy way to unpin without weakening her queen. To target that, Black makes a pin of her own on g4 with bishop g4, forcing White to go back to e2 with the bishop. And now after bishop e6, Black is managed to develop the bishop while forcing White to close the e file, which is important because one of the main reasons for White to play for an advantage here is to try to play rook e1 and knight e5. So, and the bishop on e2 is really standing in the way. However, after h6, bishop h4, Lei Tingjie went for a rook c8, which is a rare line which hasn't been played a lot in the top level chess so far. And the point here is, probably one of the reasons here is that after bishop b5, the pin is annoying, and Lei Tingjie played here a6. And both players played quite fastly, and after bishop a4, Black managed to equalize and even take initiative. One of the first interesting moments in the game was the ability of White to take on c6 here. White could have taken on c6. The point being is that rook takes c6, which is the most natural move after when you play rook c8, you basically want to take on c6 with the rook. But here there is a tactical problem for Black, because now the rook on e8 is left unprotected, and White can win a pawn. However, although even winning the pawn, Black after queen d8, Black would still have some compensation because of the two bishops for the pawn. It's actually quite similar to the game they had yesterday, where Lei Tingjie sacrificed the pawn with White for a very similar position. Maybe because of that, although Wenjun decided not to take the pawn, she went bishop a4. But now, after this sequence of very forced moves, Lei Tingjie managed to actually take over the initiative. And now it seems that although the king side is weakened, all Black's pieces are extremely well positioned. We are putting some pressure on the d4 pawn, and the bishop is fantastically placed on g4. And now it's all of a sudden White who has to, after rook d1, the d4 pawn has to be protected. And it's now White that has to deal somehow with this very unpleasant pin along the h5 d1 diagonal. So here we had the feeling, and the players also had the feeling that the tables have turned into Black's favor a little bit. And one of the possible continuations here for Black, maybe one of the most promising variations here, would be to play knight a5, trying to install the knight on c4 and putting even more pressure. One of the possible lines would be, for instance, queen c1, rook would go to c8, and then knight c4, putting some pressure. Instead, Lei decided to go king f8. And after queen d3, the point was that b4 looks extremely strong, and after knight a4, queen b5 is a very strong resource found by Lei Tingjie, because the key defender in white's position here is the queen on d3, and once it's exchanged, white will be in a big trouble. For instance, if white plays, for instance, bishop takes a5, knight c5, then after queen takes d3, rook d3, for instance, rook c2, rook e2, the rook on the second rank is simply a killing. So in this quite difficult situation, Wenjun, the world champion, found the best way to fight for equality here by a takes b4. The point being that here, after knight takes b4, forking the queen and the bishop, white has this very important resource, queen a3, which keeps the balance. Instead, both players felt that queen d3 offered black the biggest chances to continue to play for a win. But here, knight d7 is a very impressive resource found by Lei Tingjie. She's keeping both white knights away from e5 and c5, and thus keeping the life in the position, just trying to maximize the chances of her position. And it almost worked, because after bishop b3, she could have played bishop takes f3, rook e1, and after king g2, the king could have gone to d6, protecting the pawn, and then the knight goes to b4, b6, c4, and you can see all white pieces are very strangled, and this would be a real test for Wenjun's defensive abilities, because the position is very not pleasant. Instead, in the game, Lei Tingjie played bishop to f5, threatening g4, which looks very promising, but Wenjun found a very good defensive resource. The knight goes back to c3, and then after g4, knight e5 forces massive pawn and piece exchanges, and this position is a dead draw. After a few moves, we repeated. The game ended in a draw repetition. All in all, the game was extremely well played by both players. A couple of very slight inaccuracies, but all in all, almost no mistakes in this game, and it deservedly ended in a draw. Stay tuned for round 3. Thank you for watching.